temporary tattoos, although you've alerted everyone that you'll get them a permanent one so they so
I will
choose.
sponsor any permanent.
I appreciate that, Doctor. Well, again, I want to thank each of the witnesses for being available today and for offering their important perspective. We all agree that developing good spectrum policy directly informs everything from how we innovate and compete globally to how we access public services, to making broadband accessible and affordable in places like New Mexico and across the country. If we're serious about closing the digital divide, developing good policy here must be a top priority. This is especially important for New Mexico. Many of my constituents rely on wireless technology to connect to broadband at home, their businesses, and access critical services. We must ensure this resource is used to its fullest potential to serve families in states like mine. Now, my first question, Mr. Lewis, the FCC's ability to conduct spectrum auctions is set to expire in September. When we extend that authority, Congress must ensure the Commission can begin planning its future slate of auctions and start the complex technical evaluations and negotiations with incumbent spectrum users immediately. Kicking the can down the road benefits no one. Mr. Lewis, yes or no, does a longer-term extension of FCC spectrum auction authority strengthen the FCC and NTIA's ability to make spectrum available to connect all Americans to high-speed, reliable, and affordable broadband services? Can you please explain how a longer reauthorization will accelerate our mission to connect 100% of Americans to high-speed, reliable, and affordable broadband?
So a longer authorization sets up the agencies, these are the expert agencies, to do the tough work of analyzing what bands and with what guidelines those bands can be rolled out. And it's really important because we have moved into a space where there simply are not a lot of opportunities to get greenfield spectrum. And so we have to be efficient, we have to be creative, and we need to look at options such as sharing and a good mix of licensed and unlicensed. That takes careful planning by the two agencies so that all the stakeholders are taken into account when we think about what spectrum bands can be used for, what they're used best for, and how those allocations might be structured.
Appreciate that. Ms. Baker, one of the most important tasks facing the FCC and NTIA right now is the development of a coordinated strategy on national spectrum management. The last few years have shown us the tremendous costs when conflicting interests in spectrum are not resolved swiftly. When construction of critical infrastructure is delayed due to poor coordination between federal agencies, it's the people who rely on the infrastructure who suffer. Ms. Baker, yes or no, do you recommend Congress invest to increase the technological expertise at both agencies so they can more efficiently address conflicts when they arise?
Yes, I do. I think that you have two great leaders in Chairwoman Rosenworcel and Administrator Davidson. I think enabling them to have more experts and more to show their expertise and show that Congress actually wants them to be the final arbiter in spectrum disputes would go a long way.
I appreciate that, and I agree that we must ensure federal agencies have the capacity to do their jobs, and both the American public and commercial interests demand regulatory certainty and consistency, and I look forward to working with our colleagues to ensure NTIA and FCC are up to the task of managing this important resource. Mr. Vana, today, NTIA and FCC, on Monday, they announced an updated memorandum of understanding strengthening these agencies' roles as the sole agencies in charge of managing our spectrum resource. The agreement also increases coordination and addresses many of the challenges for managing bands and have a significant federal agency equity. Yes or no, does current statute clearly identify the FCC and NTIA as leaders in regulating and managing national spectrum use?
Yes, it does.
I would like to submit for the record some of the reports that you highlighted. that indicate the improvements that must be made at the FCC and NTIA, and if given an opportunity a little later, I want to explore those a little bit more. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Thune for his questions.